Hey there, friends. In this video, we begin a series discussing intervals. We're going to start with the definition of the intervals, where they are derived from, and then we're going to go through some examples. So to begin, you heard me play two examples at the start of this video where I was using lines that contained intervals in them. First was a series of intervals being played over a major pattern in C major, and then you heard me play a series of intervals played over a pattern in C minor. We will review that eventually in this series. But first, the definition of an interval. Well, in musical terms, an interval is the distance between two notes. Okay, and you heard me play these patterns. Like, we'll start with the major one where I said, okay, so how does the distance between two notes, how does that associate with what I just played? Well, basically, if you're familiar with scales, like the C major scale, okay, C major scale in one octave, you hear these patterns. So what I'm playing is that note, then I go here. Then I go this note up to here. Then this note to this note. Okay, so that is an interval right there. So it's the distance between this note and this note. Now, that is a third in the major scale. So what does that mean? Well, the first note, then the second note, which we didn't play, then we played the third note. So it's the third note above the note that you started with. That is an interval. Now, since we are starting our discussion of intervals, I only want to start off with more basic aspects of it. There are a lot of different intervals and all kinds of ways they can be used in a melodic line, a solo pattern, etc. And we'll touch on that as we go further in this series. So the very next thing I'd like to go through is, as I said, where they are derived from. Well, I kind of gave that away basically by giving you examples in a major scale and a minor scale. So with the C major scale, like I was playing earlier, and since I was doing a pattern on thirds, basically I was doing the third of, like I would play a note, then I would play the third above it. So, okay, so I'm deriving all these intervals in that example from the C major scale. And then you heard me do patterns with intervals in C minor. So, etc. So thirds are kind of a good starting place with intervals. You've heard them in many, many songs. And so what I am going to do and stress to you at this point, since we're talking about where they're derived from, is we're going to work on a major scale pattern and a minor scale pattern and show how to get those intervals out of those major and minor patterns. So as you can see, and I have tablature for this that I will basically show it towards the end of this video. So the C major scale, like I was showing you earlier, in the example that I go like this. So the C major scale is going to go like this. Okay, and then if we go up another octave, okay, so basically the third off of each note contained within that major scale is where the first series of intervals in the first pattern comes from. So once again. So that's how intervals can be derived. Basically, once you get more familiar with scales, understanding those patterns, then you can basically utilize intervals as a device from those scales to create, as I did in those two examples, two patterns that I played over a chord pattern contained in the C major and the C minor scale. So what I'm going to suggest at this point, before we get too deep into the intervals, since we're starting out, is to take a look at the tabs, practice those scale patterns, and since I said that you're going to be going the third off of each note that you're playing, what I would suggest doing is, once you get the scale patterns down, whoops, wrong note. Anyway, what I would suggest doing is then, when you get familiar with playing one octave of that scale, and do it slowly at first. Then start playing thirds. So start with the root note, the C, go to the third above it, which is the E, then go to the D, the third above it is the F, and then you go up here to the third note in the scale, the E, and then the third above that is G, then you have F, the third above that is A, etc. And start to familiarize yourself with those fingerings and in your ear so that you get used to hearing that, and you can say, oh yeah, that is a third from a major scale. So that's where we're going to conclude the first video. Next will be the tablature, and that will go through go through major scale pattern and a minor scale pattern. Like I said, those are both in C, so C major and C minor. So start off learning those patterns, and then start to slowly play the intervals in thirds like I demonstrated. And then we'll pick up from there in the next video. Thank you very much.